The first part has metabolome and the second part has omics. So here is a brief introduction of the omics cascade. So the branches of science, known informally as omics, they are the various discipline whose name end with the suffix omics. Like we have genomics, we have proteomics, and so we have metabolomics. So this is a figure which gives an idea of how this omics cascade is working. Like with reference to DNA, we have genome, so it gives rise to genomics, and then from RNA, transcriptomics, from protein, proteomics, and then we have metabolites, which are sugars, nucleotides, amino acids, and lipids, which gives rise to the study called metabolomics. So basically, these omics strategies, they aim at identifying the entire set of molecules in an organism from different kinds of biological samples, like a cell or tissue or fluid, and thus it generates a huge amount of data that can be evaluated further by biostatistics and by bioinformatics. So basically, when we are talking about metabolomics, let's give a brief introduction regarding the history of how it all began. So the term metabolome, it was first used by Oliver in 1998 to describe the collection of small molecules in an organism. Now the term metabolic profiling, it was first used by Horning when describing gas phase analytical methods for the analysis of metabolites from human urine samples. Now, under the topic metabolomics, we have two main terms or keywords like metabolites and metabolome. So, what are metabolites? Metabolites are the substrates, intermediates, or the products of metabolism. So, with the context of metabolomics, we usually say that a metabolite is any molecule that is less than 1.5 kilodalton or kDa in size. However, there can be exceptions to this depending upon the sample that we are taking and the detection method that we are using for our study. Next important term is metabolome. So this refers to the complete set of those small molecules or metabolites, which can be metabolic intermediates, hormones, and other signaling molecules, secondary metabolites that are usually found within a biological sample, specially referring to a single organism. So, combining these two terms, metabolites and metabolome, we can say that metabolomics is thus the scientific study of chemical processes, or rather biochemical processes, that are involving those metabolites, which are the substrates, intermediates, and products of cell metabolism. So, after we have done discussing about the basic terms that are there under metabolomics, we come to metabolomic strategies. So whenever we want to perform a certain biological study based on metabolomics, we usually classify the strategies under two primary analysis platform. One is the untargeted discovery, which is a global approach, and the second one is a targeted one, that is a validatory approach. Now, again, this is based on the objective of our study, what we want. Now, this is the basic difference between untargeted metabolomics and targeted metabolomics. So the untargeted one is basically a global approach where we do not have a specific target. Here we can discover any number of molecules from a range of biological samples. Like it's mentioned here, more than 1,000 metabolites can be measured. So this is basically aimed at a certain discovery or to generate a particular hypothesis. And here we do not require any chemical commercial standard. But for the targeted one, this is basically a validatory method because we have already developed a particular results and we want to validate it against a particular standard. So this one is a targeted one. So this is already hypothesis driven. We already have a hypothesis and we are validating that. So this is the basic difference between targeted and untargeted metabolomics. Now, we have already developed a strategy, targeted and untargeted. Now, how will a particular study work? So this is a simple flow line of or a flow chart of how a basic metabolomics work. And this one is particularly mentioning about an MS based metabolomics. So this one is the same, almost the same for an targeted and an untargeted approach. So what we usually do here is we design an experiment, we go for sample preparation, then we go for chromatographic methods for to get a much purer sample, and then we go for an MS or an NMR, then we go for data acquisition, data processing, and finally we analyze or we interpret the particular biological question that we had in mind before starting this particular study. So now each one I'll just give a bit details of all the steps. So after we design, like I've said previously, we design an experiment. Design in the sense we like find out what should be the sample size, or how what kind of a biological sample should we take, whether it is satisfying the biological question that we had in our mind, and what are the storage conditions, what are the possible external factors to which the sample can be exposed, or like basically to keep our sample proper, and so that we do not face any interruptions while we are carrying out an experiment. So this designing part is the initial part, and that is the most important part of the study. Next, we are coming to sample preparations. No, before that, I'll just tell about sample acquisition, like what kind of samples can we usually use. So here we can use tissue samples, we can use suspension cultured mammalian cells, we can use biofluids like we can use serum, plasma, cerebrospinal fluid, urine, saliva, sweat, feces, bile, seminal plasma. So these are the biospecimens that we are using. Now, sample preparation and extraction. So, during sample preparation, we have different extraction solvents, usually aimed for the recovery of both polar as well as non-polar compounds, based on targeted and non-targeted approach on different biological samples. So basically, the applied approaches they include optimized methanol water chloroform combinations to extract both hydrophilic as well as hydrophobic compounds, or polar and non-polar compounds. So during the sample preparation, after the centrifugation process, we have two phases. Like one is the upper part of the solvent, where it is usually separated with methanol water, followed by extraction with a lower or a non-polar solvent, that is chloroform of the centrifuged pellet. That is, we are separating the upper part, which is usually the aqueous or the polar part, and the lower one, that is usually the non-polar or the hydrophobic one. And again, if you want to get a much purer version of the sample that we are using for our study, we can go on for other separation techniques that will obviously give better results. So these are the separation techniques which can be used after the two-phase separations which I've mentioned earlier. After that, these are the techniques which are like more specific, which are more sophisticated ones, which will give even more better separations. And some of them are which are mostly used in metabolomics are LC, that is liquid chromatography. We have GC, or gas chromatography. We have HPLC, or high performance liquid chromatography. So now speaking about the principle of working of all these three types of chromatographic techniques. First, we have LC, or liquid chromatography. Now, this is a picture which is clearly showing how it is working. So, the device is basically a column which is packed with a porous medium made up of a granular solid. It can be silica or it can be any other polymers. This is acting as the stationary phase. Now here, as we see on the left side, this is the solvent or the mobile phase, and the solvent will come up through here, through this pipeline. We have the pump that is driving the solvent here. We have the sampler, so the sample is coming in through here, and therefore the mobile phase or the solvent is carrying the sample, and it is going through this column or the stationary phase. Okay, so the component with the most affinity to this particular stationary phase is the last to be separated. That is the highest the affinity, that corresponds to more time to travel to the end of the column. Now, as this is shown in this figure, these data systems and all. So that I will come later, because like most of these chromatographic techniques are usually accompanied with an MS or an NMR. So I will speak about that in my next slides. Now going on to the next separation technique is GC or gas chromatography. So again, what is the principle of this GC? So again, this is a picture which is highlighting that. Now GC usually it works a solid. It uses either a solid or a liquid phase as a stationary phase. Sorry, while using gas as the mobile phase. This is the mobile phase. So here we can see we have the mobile phase, the gas acting as a mobile phase. We have a regulator. So this mobile phase is going through here. We have the auto sampler, the sample coming in through here, and we have this particular inlet. And so the mobile phase plus the sample is coming in through this column oven. Now this is the stationary phase of the GC. So, as the sample it makes contact with the second solid or the liquid phase, the solutes that are present in the solution will start interacting with all the other phases here due to differences in the absorption rates, the ion exchanges, the partitioning, or the different sizes. Now, all these differences will make the sample mixture pass at different rates through this particular column, and accordingly, the compounds will be separated. And again, this entire detection process is done, or it's the result we get generated in a particular computer setup. So, this is the way how it is working. Coming next to HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography. How is it working? So again, this is a picture that is depicting that principle of working. So this basically works using the basic column chromatography technique. So the compounds that are determined in this HPLC, the determination is based on their retention time, or the retention time of the analytes in this particular column, and the end result is in the form of this graph that is shown on the right hand side, which is called a chromatogram. And further it is identified and quantified by a spectroscopy, which I will speak later. So, uh, though the x-axis or the y-axis is not very clearly depicted in this chromatogram, but the theoretical data it suggests that the x-axis of the graph it usually represents the retention time, and the y-axis it basically shows the absorbance. But again, that varies upon the detector that is used. Usually, we use a UV detector, or if we want more specificity than UV or higher sensitivity than UV, then we use a mass spectrometer, or we go for mass spectrometry. So the result is depicted in the chromatograph, and this is working on a basic chromatographic technique. Like the solvent is passing over here, we have the pump over here, the sample coming in through here, and we have the HPLC column, and then we have the detector, and the waste is coming out over here, and the result is depicted in the form of a chromatogram. Next, so as I've mentioned previously, in all these three separation techniques, that they are usually followed by, or they are combined with an MS, or nuclear magnetic resonance, that is a NMR. So now I'll be speaking about the basic principle and the workflow of an MS and an NMR. For an MS, this is an analytical technique to measure again the small molecules or the metabolites, which I have told like in my first slides. So the small molecules may be either directly infused into the MS, or it can be coupled through a chromatographic system. Now, the chromatographic systems are GC, HPLC, or LC. It can be coupled with all those three, or the sample can be directly injected here, which is called a direct infusion. Uh, and the resulting data, the data which comes out from this particular MS, is M by Z ratio, that is the mass to charge ratio of all the ions or all the analytes that are coming out through this particular MS system. And it also shows the time in which the particular ion beam is detected, and it also shows the intensity of the ion beams that are coming out from here. Now, from where the term ion is coming up, I'll just say that See, we have the sample coming in through here. We have the heating coil, and we have an electron gun or the ionization chamber. So the analytes are getting ionized here, they are getting fragmented. We have the electron collector here, and we have the ion acceleration chamber. Okay, so the ions that are getting generated in this particular ionization chamber, they are coming in through this particular space, that is, or they are getting accelerated in this ion acceleration chamber, and they are coming out and getting detected by the mass analyzer. Now, how does this mass analyzer detect? The detection is on the basis of their m by z ratio. M by z is mass to charge ratio. Now, usually for easier calculations, the z or the charge is taken to be equal to 1. So, m by z or m by 1 ratio, that is basically it is depicting the masses of all the ions that are coming out. So, the term is mass analyzer. So after this mass analyzer, it analyzes the ion beams or the ions that are coming out from here. Then there's a separation. Now the separation here, it shows the differently charged ions are getting separated. Then this is detected by a mass detector, and the signal is analyzed and it's amplified, and then it is recorded in the recorder. So the recorder basically, or the result of an MS basically has 3 points. One is the m by z ratio of the ions, and another one is the time by which it is detected by the detector, and the intensity triplet or intensity of the ions that are being detected. So this is the last line, that is the resulting data typically consists of m by z ratio, time, intensity triplets that describe for every detected ion mass the strength of the ion beam and the time it is detected in by the spectrometer. So these are the basic three things that is the result of an MS working. Next, we are coming to an NMR, and I'll just see about the principle and the workflow. So again, this is an analytical method or an analytical technique uh, to measure some organic and some inorganic compounds inside biological samples like a tissue or an extracted metabolite. So again, this uses a magnetic field. As we see over here, we have a magnetic field. So we have a sample tube. The sample comes in through here, and it is exposed to the magnetic field. So we have the magnetic controller, we have the magnetic field, and the RF transmitter or the radio frequency pulse. So the sample is getting exposed to the magnetic field and the radio frequency pulse. Okay, and after the sample, or after the nuclei within the like the atoms that are making the sample, after they absorb this particular radiation, they also emit a certain radiation of a particular absorbance. So here it is mentioned that is the nuclei will absorb and re-emit the electromagnetic radiation. And again, the energy that is emitted or rather re-emitted in the electromagnetic radiation, that will again have a particular resonating frequency, and that is what is detected by the detector. So here we have a figure which is showing the image that we usually get in a printer. We have the absorbance in the y-axis, we have the magnetic field shown in the x-axis. We usually get peaks which are like showing the energy or the resonating frequency of the energy that is emitted by the nuclei. In metabolomics, usually proton atoms from small molecules are usually investigated. Okay, so we are telling about nuclei. In case of metabolomics, these nuclei are the proton atoms from small molecules that are usually investigated. So next is a comparison of NMR and an MS. So, and how is an NMR or an MS different? Like for an NMR, the sensitivity is low, and for an MS, the sensitivity is higher. And the number of metabolites that are detected in an MS is usually more, that is 300 to 1000 plus, and for an NMR, it is 30 to 100. And for a targeted analysis, targeted ones we usually use in drug discoveries or in such things. An MS is better because it's better than an NMR for a targeted analysis, and it's cheaper and it occupies less space than an NMR. So these are the basic differences between an NMR and MS. And in most of the metabolomic studies, we usually couple our chromatographic techniques with an MS more than an NMR. So next, after we have gone through the chromatographic techniques, we have gone through our spectrophotometer on an NMR. Now it is the time to process the data that we have obtained from these all techniques. So this includes many steps that are similar for NMR and MS, aimed at extracting biologically relevant information from the acquired data. So the endpoint of an MS and an NMR is an annotated feature matrix. Like this is just a depiction, this particular diagram of the feature matrix. Now these are the results of a peak or a signal that was obtained from an NMR on an MS study. And each of these signals are a peak. They are representing particular chemical compounds that were present in my sample. Ultimately, this feature matrix or the list would become a list of identified metabolites with semi-quantified or quantified value. So this is just a brief representation of how do we process a data after running an MS or an NMR. And then finally, after we have obtained the data, we need to analyze that. We need to interpret that. What is the inference we are getting after studying all those or getting all those graphs and matrices and all those? So, in the context of metabolomics, the common statistical approaches that we use are divided into two parts or two methods rather. One is the univariate, and another one is the multivariate method. Now, the univariate analysis, it takes only one variable into account, resulting in differently weighted results. The multivariate, it works on a matrix of variables and highlights the characters based on relationships between all the variables. So the goal of statistical analysis is the categorization and prediction of the sample properties through generation of models that will capture the information contained in the data matrices. So data matrices, I have told previously, from those what are the predictions that you get, what you can know about the properties of the samples that we wanted to study, and generation of certain models that will capture that information. So these are some of the pictures, some biostatistics related pictures or the plots that are depicting the results that we obtained previously. So next we are coming to significance of metabolomics. So we have done a lot, like we have spoken a lot about the techniques that we are using, the flowcharts that we are using, and the separations or the chromatographic techniques that we have used. Now, why is metabolomics such important, or why is it becoming highly significant in the field of research today? It's just because this is of a non invasive nature, and it's closely linked to the phenotype of an organism. That is, it's basically showing what is currently happening in a particular organism, or rather, specifically, a particular cell, tissue, biofluid, anything. So that is what adds primarily to its significance. Its importance is greater than 95% of all the clinical assay tests. For small molecules, 89% of all the known drugs usually are small molecules, in which 50% of all the drugs are derived from pre existing metabolites. 30% of the identified genetic disorders, they occupy diseases of small molecule metabolism. Thus, metabolites are the canaries of the genome, and it's obviously more sensitive than other omics or omic sciences, whatever we say. Next, we come to the applications and the future prospects of metabolomics. So metabolomics, it's applied in a number of fields, like we see in this medicine, toxicology, and we see in this figure toxicology testing, clinical trial testing, drug phenotypic, genetic disorder, nutrition science, forensic science, precision medicine, and many others. So some of the future prospects, like this is highly being used in the field of biomarker discovery, and many more such discoveries are yet coming up. The second one is the personalized medicine. Now, personalized medicine is the ultimate customization of healthcare, which requires metabolomics for quick medical diagnosis to identify the disease. And metabolomics, it also helps to improve certain genetically modified plants, helps to estimate the associated risk by looking into their biochemistry at different time points during plant development. So the last point is something related to the field of agriculture. The first two are related to the field of medicine. And with this, we usually come to an end. Here are some of the references for the write ups and the figures that I have used in my presentation. So, with that, we come to an end of the topic. That is a presentation on metabolomics, and that's it. Thank you.
The topic is open for discussion.
Darshana, tell me something. You've presented very nicely, but the different chromatographies you use, you described, and even the NMR and mass spectrometry. When do you use these
Yes.
chromatographies, like liquid, gas? What are the indications of using these techniques?
Okay, sir. This was a more
Like
like a general one.
which molecules you'll use gas chromatography, which molecules you'll use HPCL, which molecules you'll use liquid chromatography.
Okay, so here I didn't mention any specific ones, like because the range is quite huge. So it was because on a generalized topic on metabolomics, in general I have described these things. Mostly, if I go for a fecal or a bile acid analysis, I can go for gas chromatography, GCMS, or I can go for solid phase extraction technique followed by a GC and an MS. So, because the range of molecules are diverse, and I specifically didn't focus on those, I give a generalized approach to this particular field.
And then also when mass spectrum MS is significantly better than MNR and NMR in most of
Ye-
the comparisons.
ye-
Why is it
Yes.
even used today? Like, what is its significance in today?
Okay, sir. So, obviously, MS can also have some, like most of the studies, what we usually find in different papers and all, they're using an MS. But again, because the sensitivity is quite high over here, but NMR is also used in many cases because, though I've not mentioned it, but through certain papers and all, what I found is that the reproducibility is also high. Like if we want to get more amount of samples at certain times, or we want to analyze more amount of samples, then we can go for an NMR. Now that again will also vary upon my target of study, like what kind of a range of study I want to perform. Like, is it limited to a small group, or I want to go for a huge range of sampling? So again, so that may vary. That what I feel.
Okay.
I think, Tarun, the answer to your last question is that NMR is something which can be used in vivo. It
Okay.
can be used on a live organisms like we do coupled with the MRI.
Mm-hmm.
We get a NMR spectrum over there, and that helps us identifying the metabolites and making diagnosis, especially in the brain tumors.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, sir.
for MS, it has to be in vitro. It cannot be applied to the living system.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, sir.
that is one of the basic differences between NMR and MS. NMR is mostly used in diagnostic techniques coupled with the MRI nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So you must be remembering seeing the
Yeah, yeah,
NMR
I remember.
spectrum.
Sir.
Yeah. So that is one of the basic differences between the NMR and the MS system. Uh,
Okay.
Other than that, when we are using for metabolites in general, we prefer to use a MS system, and most of the time the MS system is combined with LS, LC, liquid chromatography.
Yes.
So it is LCMS, it is called.
Yes.
And there are
So,
other systems like Multitoph.
Yes.
etc., which she has not touched upon.
Yes, sir. Those statistics techniques have not touched upon.
Yeah, these are
Sir,
not
this.
statistics techniques. These are
Okay.
multi-top, top, multi-top, known,
Okay.
unknown.
So,
Uh,
okay.
basically, basically, in the metabolomics, as she said, there are two approaches. One is a global approach where you don't know what metabolites are contained in the sample. So
Yes.
you just extract all the metabolites and run them on a LC, and then pass
Yes.
them through a MS, and then you identify what are the components which are present.
Okay. Sir.
And the second approach is a targeted approach, as she said, that
Yes.
you want to find out a specific metabolite, whether it is present or it is not present.
Yes.
So when we are doing for the drug toxicities or forensic science, we are specifically
Mm.
looking for targets.
Yes. For targeted metabolomics, we're
We are
looking for.
looking for targeted metabolomics. We are trying to
Yes.
find out whether the patient has consumed cannabis or patient has consumed heroin or consumed a poison, particular poison. So
Okay.
we are looking at a particular target over there. But
Mm.
when we are doing for a research where there is no background data is available, we
Yes.
simply go and do look for everything and see which are
Yes.
the metabolites which are present in higher concentration compared to normal tissues or compared to benign diseases. And
Okay,
then it
sir.
is the differential concentrations which we focus on. And if we find it a substance which is expressed more in cancer than in normal, we say that this is probably significant. And then we go for
Yes.
targeted metabolomics to see whether
Yes.
this finding is consistent or it is not consistent, which is called validation.
Validation. Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, like I have one question from this only. Like whenever we are doing any drug testing and all, so for a targeted approach, sir, specifically, how do we use the drug testing? Like how does it work? Though I've mentioned it, but like the details, how does it work, sir? I want to know that.
You run a standard, and
Okay.
once you run a standard, you know the MZ ratio of that uh, particular substance.
Okay, sir.
You or even on HPLC, when you run it, you know that where the chromatographic peak is going to come,
Come, yes.
and then you just look at that particular peak, and if the peak is there, you say that the substance is present. If the peak is
Okay.
absent, you say the substance is absent. And height of the peak tells you the concentration levels. So larger
Yes.
the peak, more the concentration.
Okay. Okay.
Any other question from
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yamanjusha?
Yeah. So when we talk about the HPLC, we already know the normal phases and the reverse phase. So tell me, Dhotrina, what is the difference between the normal phase HPLC of their column and the reversed phase HPLC of their column? Is there any differences or is the same?
I'm sorry, I didn't focus on this particular normal phase and reverse phase.
Okay. Sir, is there any differences?
Well, definitely there are differences between the normal and the reverse phase.
Okay, sir.
Uh, and everything depends upon what exactly you want to do.
Okay, sir.
See, the basic difference is whether your stationary phase is polar or a non-polar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Normal phase,
this basically defines whether you are using a normal or a reverse phase.
reverse phase. Okay, sir.
So whatever Dotrina taught about uh, the polar phase being the uh, step static phase here, if you
Yes,
make
sir.
that phase mobile and the other phase is static, it
Yeah,
becomes a reverse.
reverse one.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Good morning.
Yes, Monica.
Morning, everyone. This is Monica. My question to Dr. Rana is analysis that it makes. So, can you how
Monica,
metabolism?
your
I
audio
can't
is
get
not
you.
coming. Can you type your question in the chat box? Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are
now
audible.
Am I
you.
audible? Yes. My question is that in the first slide you explain about the
Yeah,
omics,
yeah.
the large scale analysis. Can you tell me how metabolism is better than genomics, transcriptomics,
See,
or proteomics?
basically, wait, I'll just go on to the first slide, and that very clearly shows that. See here, like you can see on the left hand, it's showing DNA, then RNA, proteins, and then metabolites. And on the right hand, it is showed exactly what it is meaning. So from DNA, we come to know what can happen. From RNA, what appears to be happening, and from proteins, what makes it happen. And from metabolites or from metabolomics, we know exactly what has happened and what is happening currently, because it is correlating with the phenotype of the organism, which also have said lastly. So that is basic significance that makes it somewhat better than other omic sciences.
But if we talk about genomics or transcriptomics, the single silent mutation can't be detected. Or if we talk about the proteomics, all the type of enzymes or the protein products can't be detected by a protein
Yes.
proteomics or can't be functional. So how the metabolites
I'm not
can be
getting
a
that. Like
better option?
you are saying how
You talk
metabolomics.
for DNA, it's genomics.
Yeah, like
But
yeah, like you're saying about how is it significant and it's better than other omics.
Now, Dr. she wants to know why metabolomics is better than genomics or transcriptomics.
Sir, yes, like what I have mentioned, like because it's correlating with the current phenotype of the organism or the current like clinical state of the organism. Basically, if you are speaking about the field of medicine or like in the clinical field, if we are speaking about, then because it is giving an idea about the current state, like if a particular person has some kind of a disorder or like he's going through some kind of a problem, and we are analyzing the fluids of an organism or the biological cell tissue, anything, so we get an idea about the current state, or like what I've said, in the future prospect also it will speak more about the personalized medicine.
Yeah. In a single line, Dr. the answer is that when you do the metabolomics,
Yeah,
you know that the DNA transcription has taken place.
yeah,
You know that translation has taken place,
yes,
and you know that the effector proteins are there.
yes,
So when you do a genomics, you don't know whether the transcriptome is going to be same or it's going to be different.
different,
When you do a transcriptome, you don't know whether translation is going to take place or not. But when
yes,
you do a metabolomics, you know that the protein synthesis has taken place and
yes,
certain biological process has taken place
yes, sir.
that has produced those metabolites.
Yes, sir.
So that is why finding out the metabolites is more important or
Yes, sir.
more closer to truth than
Yes,
the
sir,
genomics.
because yes, so that I feel that it's more, it's correlating with the phenotype of the organism. Like all the other steps have taken previously, and this is the ultimate one. Uh, like that can
Yeah,
somewhat
if you
relate to my presence.
everything has its own utility. Genomics has its own
Yes, sir,
utility.
that's definitely.
Transcriptomics has its own utility.
Yes, sir.
If you are looking for a SNP, you have to go to genomics.
Genomics.
And if you are looking for an abnormality in protein, you have to go to proteomics. If you want
Yes.
to see what is translating, then you have to go for
Yes.
transcriptomics. So
Yeah.
everything has its own importance.
Yes.
But if a DNA translates into RNA, does not mean that protein synthesis will take place.
Yes, sir.
But when we do a metabolomics, we know that the synthesis has taken place,
Already taken place.
already
Yes.
taken place.
Yes.
So uh, everything has its own importance, and there is
Yes, sir.
nothing called as more important or less important.
Yeah. So again, it depends upon my target. Like, what is my question of interest? If
Exactly.
my question specifically deals with the gene sequence and all, then maybe I'll go for a genomics.
Yes.
So again, sir, the
Thank
question
you.
of interest also it varies. The result will vary.
Molecule of interest.
Yes, sir. Molecule of interest. Sorry. So yes.
Yes. Anything else, Monica?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
So if there are no other questions, thank you, Dr. It
Thank you,
was a
sir.
very basic talk, nicely
Yeah.
delivered.
Yes, it's a generalized approach. I didn't go
Yes.
in too much details for each of the because many biostatistic techniques and all, like I am also not very detailedly aware of that, which we think we learn in our next
Uh,
phase. So,
Biostatistics, probably Nishu will be taking care of, and
okay,
she
sir.
will be taking seminar on biostatistics.
Okay, sir. Then it
And
will be
in
easier.
future, Monica is going to talk about bioinformatics, where
Okay.
she is more useful. So we
Okay, sir.
will
Yes,
we will utilize expertise of each one of you from different
Yes,
backgrounds.
sir. That will be very
That is
helpful.
the advantage of having four people from four different backgrounds, that
Yes.
you merge your knowledge and comes out with the better understanding of each another subject. And
Yes, sir.
that is what the national education policy at present is emphasizing: multiple entries and multiple exits. So
yes, sir.
anybody from any specialty walk into a specialty and cross out
Yes, sir.
into another specialty. So this is what we are going to see in future, and this is actually the future. So
Yes.
pure sciences on one hand and cross sciences on the other side. That's what we are going to see, because we are going to see a lot more cross applications coming up in future.
Yes.
So thank you everyone. And next week there are two journal club topics, and I'll send you the link on Sunday or Monday.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Thank
Yes.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Have a nice day, sir, everyone.
Thank you. You
Thank you.
too.
Thank you.